The next screen is a trunk stability push-up. The trunk stability push-up forces the body in a position where the torso must be stabilized to prevent hyperextension of the lumbar spine. The purpose of the trunk stability push-up is to assess trunk stability in the sagittal plane while a symmetrical upper extremity motion is performed. Scapular stability is assessed indirectly. In describing the trunk stability push-up, the athlete assumes a prone position with the hands spaced shoulder width apart. The athlete places the hands so that the thumbs are aligned with the top of the head and fully extends the knees. The female athlete should lower the hands so that the thumbs are aligned with the chin. From the appropriate position, the athlete performs one push-up, lifting the body as a unit with no lag in the lumbar spine. The male athlete who cannot perform a push-up from the standard starting position lowers the hands so that the thumbs are aligned with the chin and then performs a push-up. If the female athlete cannot perform a push-up from this position, she lowers the hands so that the thumbs are aligned with the clavicle and performs a push-up. Criteria for obtaining a 3 are as follows. Males perform one repetition with thumbs aligned with the top of the head. Females perform one repetition with the thumbs aligned with the chin. This is the second of the functional movement screen clearing exams. The clearing exam for the trunk stability push-up includes lumbar extension. Lumbar extension should also be cleared after this screen, even if the score of 3 is given. Performing a press-up in the push-up position will clear spinal extension. If pain is noted during the lumbar extension, a score of 0 will be given for the trunk stability push-up. Tips for testing include: tell them to lift the body as a unit, make sure original hand position is maintained and the hands do not slide down when they prepare to lift, make sure their chest and stomach come off the floor at the same instance, and when in doubt, score it low. The clearing test overrides the test score. Now, let's review the trunk stability push-up. As indicated, male or female, we want to make sure that the appropriate hand position is chosen. For males, it will be at the top of the head, hands shoulder width apart. Want to make sure the ankles dorsiflexed, and then before we ever try to lift the body as a unit, we want to make sure that knee extension occurs here to elevate the thighs. Good. And then we'd be instructed to press. We want to elevate as a unit. Very good. And then back down. If Steve had not been able to lift as a unit from this position, then we would have lowered the hands so that the thumbs were in line with the chin, and then we would have attempted that for a score of a 2 if it were performed correctly. Again, most of the emphasis is obviously placed on lifting the body as a unit, not to increase the amount of lumbar extension with which the individual starts with to begin with. In addition to this, we want to make sure that we do the clearing exam for the trunk stability push-up, which is the prone press up and actually addresses lumbar extension. So while maintaining contact with as much of the mat as possible with the hips, we want Steve to actually extend the arms and extend upward, thus extending the spine. We would check for pain or discomfort with this, and this score would in fact override the previous score for the trunk stability push-up should he have pain or discomfort. The next screen will be the rotational stability screen. This screen is a complex movement requiring proper neuromuscular coordination and energy transfer from one segment of the body to another through the torso. The purpose of the rotatory stability screen is to assess multiplanar trunk stability during a combined upper and lower extremity motion. In describing the rotatory stability screen, the athlete assumes a quadruped position with the shoulders at 90 degrees relative to the upper torso and the hips and knees at 90 degrees relative to the lower torso. The ankles remain dorsiflexed. A 2x6 board is placed between the knees and hands so that the knees and hands are in contact with the board. The athlete flexes the shoulder and extends the same side hip and knee. The athlete raises the leg and hand just enough to clear the floor by approximately 6 inches. The lifted elbow, hand, and knee should all remain in line with the board. The torso should remain in the same plane as the board. The athlete then flexes the same side shoulder and knee, left, enough for the elbow and knee to touch. The athlete is allowed up to 3 chances to perform the test. If the athlete does not attain a score of 3, he or she performs the drill in a diagonal pattern using the opposite side shoulder and hip, as in left and right. Have the athlete perform the test again with the arms and legs in the opposite positions. If testing produces a lower score with either the left or the right arm elevated, score the lower side. Criteria for obtaining a 3 are as follows. Athlete performs 1 correct repetition while performing the torso in a parallel to board manner. The elbow and knee stay in line with the board. As with the trunk stability push-up test, there is also a clearing test for the rotatory stability. This includes lumbar flexion. Lumbar flexion should be cleared after this screen, even if a score of 3 is given. To clear spinal flexion, the individual assumes a quadruped position, rocks back, and takes the buttocks to the heels and the chest to the thighs. The hand should remain in front of the body, reaching out as far as possible. Feet and toes should be plantar flexed. If pain occurs, a 0 is given. Tips for testing include scoring the identified upper extremity movement. If someone gets a 3, both diagonal patterns must be performed and scored. The information should be noted on the score sheet. Make sure the knee and elbow remain over the board and the back remains flat. Make sure the elbow and knee touch during the flexion part of the movement. Provide cueing to let the individual know that he or she does not need to raise the hip and arm above 6 inches of the floor. And when in doubt, score low. Now, let's review the rotatory stability screen. The hands and legs placed evenly beside the board. Contact is made with the hands and knees before Steve actually starts, and then we want to make sure that the indicated side or the ipsilateral side which is moving stays in line with the board during the movement. If that is the case, we also should see an erect, stable spine without deviation from side to side. Now, in the event that Steve could not do that side individually or ipsilaterally, then we would have Steve do a diagonal with the opposite shoulder and hip movement, which results in touching of the knee and elbow in the opposite side. Even though Steve is doing a diagonal motion, we still should see limited motion about the spine. In order to score each of these, we need to do them contralaterally or on each side. So in order for Steve to achieve a 3 on each side, he would have to perform that bilaterally, as well as if he were doing it diagonally in order to achieve a 2. The inability to do the diagonal would result in a score of 1. In elevating or extending the arm and leg with either of the movements, we want to ensure that there is not a great deal of extension within the hip to the point that it creates lumbar extension. Therefore, elevating the toes and or the hand above the floor by 6 inches would be adequate. Very good. As in the trunk stability push-up, there is also a clearing screen for the rotatory stability screen. And this includes a posterior rock position in which we are checking lumbar flexion. So we start out in quadruped, hands and knees. I want Steve to perform a posterior rock, taking his buttocks back to his heels. Hands and arms remain out in front, shoulders flexed. Drops his chest to his thighs, buttocks to heels. I want to check to see if there's any discomfort or pain with this. If so, the score of 0 would override the initial score which Steve had received in the rotatory stability screen.